It's fine. It's fine. I'm happy to be here. As soon as I put on the camera, I thought, well, love it.
Sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for sharing this spicy.
Good. Good to see you. When I run down.
Thanks for sharing this spicy. Ah! There you go. There you go. And so I'm also a professor at Super Conference. Like I said, we're talking about this. And the name of the students got AJ Williams, John AJ Williams, who has professor there. I think that's he was a foreign chair. He just made his transition recently, 2 years ago, in terms of he passed away. But yeah, I really love this place. So nice. We have I love academia. I love it. There you go. It's like the declaration. Hey, I don't know. You said it, not me. You said it. Fabulous. Paulie, good morning to you.
So what do I? Okay. I don't even.
Well, I got my cane to defend myself with.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, good morning. Constance. Good morning, Constance. There you go. There you go. Good morning.
We were actually originally from New York City. Okay. And then we moved, believe it or not, first to Kingston, then to Newport, now we're in Virginia.
You got it. Okay. I'm just throwing it.
You write a few words on the back of it. Write something. Okay. How I introduce you. Okay.
Were you teaching when you were down there? Where were you born at? Was it New York City? How long ago?
Okay. Keep it simple. Is it correct? No.
How the church find you?
It's okay. I didn't even think of it. 'Cause I was like, everybody knows me, but that's not true. That's not true. Right? That's not true. They don't even know me.
There you go.
And even put in, maybe today we're going to talk about
Oh yeah.
something like that. Just give me
You don't find any of these.
Gotcha.
It's totally fine.
Irresponsible. I was trying to get fired from this job.
That's what you're ready to do.
And then Catherine did it last week and totally messed up. And I thought, darn, if they're going to keep her,
Then
there's
nothing you can do to get
I can't screw this up more than she did. So, darn it.
Essentially, you might say liberal Christianity. A person can believe whatever they want to believe in terms of their own spiritual knowledge. It's how one
Does this make sense?
Italians, right?
And they don't pronounce the E, Ardizzone.
Ardizzone. Yeah, think of it like
Ardizzone.
that.
I
Yep.
do, okay.
Okay, and then we're all using this link, right? Yeah. Okay. So see if you can read my handwriting. Okay.
Professor Vassar and the founder and director of Peace Education Center at Pleasant Valley University. Their interest in climate change and environment is their sermon today about the intersection of science and spirituality.
Forwards and backwards. Here you go.
Hey, please. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Catskills. I'm Cheryl Chandler, the Worship Associate for this morning. Many thanks to our technical team for their help with this morning's service. A big welcome to everyone, whether you're attending live in the sanctuary or via Zoom. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious faith that carries no creed and welcomes all seekers. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We are guided by a set of principles and written sources that encompass the many ways we come to know and understand the world, the universe, and the divine. Our principles are important to us at UU Catskills, and we live our values on a daily basis. We affirm that Black Lives Matter. We are a welcoming and affirming congregation for the LGBTQ+ community. We are a congregational affiliate of the Ulster Immigrant Defense Network, and we are an active voice in the effort to address climate change. Our sanctuary is built on the land of the Lenni Lenape people. Please take a moment and just greet people around you, if you will. You could visit our website, uucatskills.org, to find contact information, to be added to the mailing list, and to find the latest newsletter. You will also find newsworthy items and upcoming events in our UU community. A special welcome to all visitors with us today. If you are in person in the sanctuary and would like to introduce yourself, please raise your hand, as we would love to say hello and welcome you personally. Anyone who wants to introduce themselves? There we go.
Peace, family. It's a joy to be here. Since I pulled up in the parking lot, I felt welcome. My name is Anthony Dandridge. I'm the executive director of the A.J. Williams Myers African Roots Center down in Kentucky, and I'm just blessed to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Welcome. If you are a visitor online and would like to be added to our mailing list, you can put your name and email address. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Go. I'm new at this job. Go ahead. Welcome. Anyone else? Okay. You're going to put it on the review, my Is it a Yelp review? I'm sorry. Okay. If you are a visitor online and would like to be added to our mailing list, you can put your name and email address in the chat box area. After the service, please stay for an in-person or virtual coffee break. And something else today, I'll tell you in a moment. A reminder to please take a moment to turn off your cell phones or other electronic devices. Give yourself permission to be fully present here now. And once again, thank you to everyone who helped put together this service. I have a few announcements. Well, I'm going to reintroduce Anthony Dandridge. As you heard, Executive Director of the A.J. Williams Myers African Root Center and a Professor of Black Studies at SUNY New Paltz. He's got the Queen's Wave down. We rehearsed that. This is good. He will be staying after the service if you would like to hear him. He would like to speak a bit about what he does, and this is one of the organizations that we support through our donations. Also, Paula Silby has a social action minute.
Hi. As many of you know, Margaret Seller's son, Jonathan, and his wife, Beth, were longtime members here. They both had Down syndrome. And right now, there's a real need for help. The workforce is about 20% vacant for direct support professionals, the people who provide care. The governor's budget proposed a 1.5% cost of living increase when a 3.2% increase is needed to meet current inflation. Additional resources would be needed to fund any enhanced programs the government recommends. Without the necessary workforce, New York fails in supporting people with I/DD. In honor of John and Beth, we would like to have you sign a petition that Donna nicely made up. I'll be in the back at the end. And there's also information of our representatives and the governor so that you can call them directly and suggest or demand that if they want your vote, they need to increase this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. Let's see. I thought I had one more. Oh, yeah, I do. All right. Don't forget the first acoustics concert at 3 o'clock this afternoon right here in the sanctuary. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Sorry, a little typo. Coco and Bruce hope many of you will stick around for the show or come back between 2:30 and 3. The music starts at 3 o'clock. Okay? That's today. All right. And our prelude this morning is the Elegy for the Arctic by Ludovico Einaudi, played by Catherine Catabiani. Thank you, Catherine. Any children want to come light the chalice? Ah, great. You do that and then pass it to her. Oh, we got some more. Go ahead. That's okay. Stay on up here. And please join me in our chalice lighting words in your order of service. We light this chalice in grateful, loving community. Even in the darkest of times, may its flame light path to courage, justice, and do it again. That's okay. Oh, forget the new lighter.
Yeah.
Okay. We tried something new this morning.
Who's got the thing?
No, that's old.
It's a new thing.
Hold it sideways. Yay.
Want to blow it out? You too, blow it out. And please join me in the unison affirmation in your order of service. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love to all living beings. May we know once again that we are not isolated, but connected in wonder and joy to mystery and miracle in the universe, in this community, and in each other. Okay. You do it, opening words. Okay. So, let me introduce, to some of you, it's not an introduction because she was our minister, but for some of you, it might be new. The Reverend Dr. Leonisa Ardizzone is a community UU minister, a professor at Vassar College, and the founder and director of the Peace Education Center of the Hudson Valley in Rosendale. Her interest in climate change and environmental justice informs her sermon today about the intersection of science and spirituality. And she has our opening words.
Thanks, Cheryl. Hi, everybody. Hello. I chose words today from this wonderful book called Earth Prayers, which I know many of you know. And our opening words are from the United Nations Environmental Sabbath Program. And it's entitled, "We Have Forgotten Who We Are." We have forgotten who we are. We have alienated ourselves from the unfolding of the cosmos. We have become estranged from the movements of the earth. We have turned our backs on the cycles of life. We have forgotten who we are. We have sought only our own security. We have exploited simply for our own ends. We have distorted our knowledge. We have abused our power. We have forgotten who we are. Now the land is barren and the waters are poisoned and the air is polluted. We have forgotten who we are. Now the forests are dying and the creatures are disappearing and humans are despairing. We have forgotten who we are. We ask forgiveness. We ask for the gift of remembering. We ask for the strength to change. We have forgotten who we are. And let's join in singing our first hymn, number 175. We celebrate the web of life.
For
So our not for children only, not for children only, not for time for all ages, not for. Do they want to come? Do you want to come up? I mean, I'm going to show everybody the pictures, but maybe y'all come up and I can talk to you about who I'm going to talk about, and I'll angle myself. Does that? Oh, did I mess up the cameras by moving? Okay, all right. Sorry. Forgot. Hi, Dad. Hi. You want to sit? Where should we sit? Yeah. You want to sit? All right. Yeah. It won't be long, but we can, yeah. Come on, come on. It's really okay. Mm-hmm. All right, we good? So friends, children of all ages, I was thinking about this time for all ages, not for children only, and wanted to bring together what I'm talking about, which is environmental work, and Black History Month. So I was lucky enough to, and I think some of you might have been on that call with me, because it was a Zoom where we got to hear from this woman named Catherine Coleman Flowers. Kathy, were you on that phone call with me once? Maybe? I know, I'm like, I think it was, because it was during the pandemic. So, you see this picture here, right? So her name is Catherine Coleman Flowers, and I'm going to show you another thing. And she does work in environmental justice. Do you know what that is? Any idea? A mouse? No? Anyone?
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense? Well, it's about to make all the sense in the world, Jake. Right?
Saving the earth.
Saving the earth plus the people who are affected by it most, the problems most. And so she does all these, she was actually asked to be on a commission by our current president, and she did research in parts of the country where the poorest people lived, who had the dirtiest water, the worst sanitation, the worst air pollution. And so she wrote this, which is a really lovely title. Check that out. Flushed and Forgotten. Sanitation and wastewater in rural communities in the United States, right? And so she has, it's like a 64-page report. You can find it online, and it's really interesting. And a result of doing all her wonderful work, she founded the Center for Rural Enterprise and Environmental Justice. So what that means is she thinks that people should be able to live in places where they feel healthy and cared for, and they should be able to work there. They shouldn't have to leave places because the water is dirty. Does that make sense to you, Mel? Right? That sounds like a good idea, right? And here's the best part for those of us who she's a MacArthur Fellow. So do you all know who that is, right? So, right, MacArthur Fellow. So in 2020, so that means people think that your work is so amazing that you get $500,000 to just go do your work. So pretty sure she's a smarty pants, and pretty sure she's doing really important stuff. So, so she's on the task force of climate change, and she is the only Black member of that task force, which is clearly problematic. So I'm glad she's there representing. And she is now a member of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. So there is a person there fighting for the rights of the people who are most often ignored when things go poorly in the environment. So that's what I wanted to share today. So you can look her up, check her out. She's pretty interesting, okay? All right, that's all, I think. Thanks. I just wanted to invite us into a short moment of prayer and meditation after all we've just heard. So I guess feet on the ground as best as you can, spine straight, eyes open or closed, your call. And let's just sit in silence for a few minutes. Let's enjoy the stillness of community, the collective support of sharing our joys and sorrows together, the weight of the world. Let's just take a few breaths in silence. Spirit of life, we offer our gratitude for you hearing our thoughts and concerns, joys and sorrows. Be with us as we make our way in this challenging world. Remind us to find stillness. Remind us to find joy. Remind us to bring joy to one another. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
Through our half-plate donations, we contribute to local organizations who are living our values in the work that they do. The donations will be divided equally amongst these 7 charities: Seed Song Farm, Center for Creative Education, Hudson River Sloop Clearwater, Kingston Emergency Food Collaborative, A.J. Williams Myers African Root Center, Hudson Valley LGBTQ+ Center, and Ulster Immigrant Defense Network. You can also donate using the donate page on our website, with PayPal, or by mailing your check through the U.S. mail. You'll see a QR code on the order of service for PayPal. Our offertory music today is I, Ondine, by Londine,
which means water spirit.
of course, Londine, by Cecile. Thank you, Catherine. And thank you all for your generosity. The reading today is an excerpt from When Time is Short by Timothy Beale. And I'll just say that there's one bad word in it, but I already put a quarter in the swear jar at home, which was the rule in our family. You had to do that until my 4 sons figured out if they pooled all their money and put in $50, they could swear anytime they want. also worked the same way when they left their sports equipment lying around, and we would take it and we would charge them $1 to get it back. They collaborated, the four of them, and said, well, let them take your basketball, you can use mine. And so it just was a closet full of sports equipment and completely ineffective. And so what I do now is spoil their children, my grandchildren, when time is short. Our apparent inability to imagine our own potential extinction has kept us from making the kinds of radical economic, political, and social changes that would have been necessary to give ourselves a fighting chance at longer-term survival as a species. It's as if we think there's some invisible safety net out there. We may get pretty far down the road to self-destruction, but we'll figure things out in time. We always do. As the hero Mark Watney, played by Matt Damon, put in The Martian, we'll just have to science the shit out of this, which is exactly what he and his NASA colleagues kept doing throughout the movie, all the way to the final scene in which he explains to his future space-traveling students that when all hope of survival seems lost, quote, you can either accept that or you can get to work. You do the math. You solve one problem and you solve the next one, and then the next. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home, end quote. We can science our way out of anything we seem to believe.
Tablet is acting up. Sorry, technology getting the best of me. There we go. So last summer, I went to Star Island. I know. Who's been to Star Island? Okay, I figured you two, New Hampshireites, right? Yeah, it's a UU and UCC owned island off the coast of New Hampshire. Highly recommended. Have never been able to afford it, so this was the first year because I applied to be part of a conference called with the organization known as IRIS, which is the Institute on Religion in an Age of Science. And they were pretty cool folks, right? And what was great is I submitted this paper. Not only did I get accepted, but they liked it so much that I won a fellowship, and Michael and I got to go for free. So we spent a week on Star Island with people who are as nerdy as I am, because everyone was either a scientist or a theologian, but the large percentage were people who were both, right? And the whole theme of the conference was the wizards of climate change. How can technology serve hope and justice? And so I picked this reading, and what I'm going to share with you are some of the things that I wrote about for the talk I gave, because we were having the whole point of when science and technology really fix the climate crisis, right? Because people throw that around, as in our reading says, a regular response that technology will fix it. Technology has all the answers, right? I don't buy it. Or maybe I should say, it gives me great pause. How's that? So, and I know you already know how I feel about climate issues, and I know that you all do amazing stuff. I love that the added program for children and partnerships with CCL and the climate conference and Green Faith and other things that keep going. So I know, and then Kathy pretty much asked me to talk about this topic, right? So if I'm remembering correctly. So I hope it's not too surprising that I would, right? And so I've been using the phrase climate chaos because we're past the point of looking at it as like some little change that's happening, right? So we use chaos in the sense of like all the attendant problems that come with the changing landscape of the planet. And I want to point out, as was why I also brought Catherine Flowers into the things, is that so many of the repercussions for climate chaos are downstream. They are among people who have been the most historically oppressed, the ones who are now hit the hardest, and we know that their oppression was a purpose. It was the result of colonialism, of exploitative capitalism, and the language of we have to bring people into modernity, right? And so that language there, right, is like, and that's a very scientific language as well, right? We bring you forward with us, but people of conscience, and I like to think all of us here included, want to imagine solutions and changes, but we have to remember that we cannot fix the system with the same way the system came to be, right? A paradigm shift. So the talk I gave, I used a three-legged stool. I love analogy, you know, like things like that, right? And we know that three-legged stools are balanced on any ground, right? That's hence why I guess you milk things with them, right? Because you could put them on rocky surfaces. And my three legs are science, which gives us data and understanding. Spirituality, which I want to go another order. Science, which gives us data and understanding. Sorry, am I not close enough? Should I talk a little? Okay. Technology, which gives possibilities and solutions. And the third is spirituality, which gives us grounding and tools for holistic transformation. And so when I was preparing the talk, and now it's an article, and I could send it if anybody's interested, but I was thinking of my dear mentor, Betty Reardon, whom you've probably heard about, but Betty left this mortal coil in November at the age of 94. It was a rough month for many of us who lived and breathed on her teachings. But she taught me to name the problematics, right? Name what you are up against. And so I tried to name 6. And I'm sure there's some I missed, but I wanted to share these 6 because I'm wondering how they resonate with all of you, right? So the first one I call climate misinformation and climate denial, right? And I'm assuming all of us at one point in time have been stuck in a conversation with a climate denier or something, right? And then you were like, here's my growing edge. I'm gonna live into this conversation. I'm not gonna run for the bar, tempting though it may be. I'm speaking from experience, right? But the point is it's out there. And the misinformation, and I can say this as a person who's been teaching science for years, is a lot of it is due to bad science education and almost no environmental education in this country, for example. And so what happens when you have misinformed or undereducated and under science literate, it's a made up phrased word, right? Then when the fossil fuel lobby does its thing, it can really land, right? So I think that's one thing we're working with. Now the second one is apocalyptic religious thinking, right? So, you know, in many traditions, the focus on the afterlife, the kingdom of heaven, the place that's prettier than here, really gives people some sense that, well, I don't really have to care about the here and now because I'll be taken care of in the next place. And so I see it as, among many sects or groups of people, as like a wholesale uncaring of what happens here, because this is just a way station of sorts, right? So, is that right? Resonate for people? I know we got some, right? Okay, yeah, all right. Now the third one, this one was a little trickier to write because a lot of this resonates with me spiritually. So I called it the purely heart-centered work of earth care, or a woo-woo sense of spirituality. And we talk about this in the Peace Ed Center too. Like, peace is not about some woo-woo feeling. Peace is like critical and deracinating and understanding, right? But what happens is, and I actually have my students read an article about people who go into the woods looking for fairies because it helps them understand the environment. And I'm like, you do you. I'm not gonna yuck your yum, right? But other people want to yuck that yum so much that then we dismiss those folks, right? So that woo-woo spirituality winds up in many ways working against movements because they get dismissed as quacks, right? Or, I don't know, hippies, guilty as charged, right? And we also then use that as a way to dismiss indigenous ways of knowing and thinking, right? Because, oh, that's old, or that's outmoded, or it's not progressive, or whatever language you want to use, right? Yeah, you throw deep ecology in there too. All these things that are really trying to get back wind up getting disregarded because, for the most part, we value empirical data and reason. And I'm saying this as a Unitarian Universalist, right? And we're those people too, right? Which leads me to my fourth problematic, the hardcore scientific mindset. And I have to say, this was really fun to say out loud in a room of people who, one of which had 3 PhDs. 3 PhDs. Why would you do that? I don't know. But he had 3 PhDs. So like super smarty pants. And all these people, physicists and blah, blah, and they're talking about all these things. And I was just like, maybe science has a communications problem, right? Maybe if we live so hard into data, we just scare people, right? I mean, I love it. I think we need the data, but I think we need to like figure out how we communicate it, because what I see happen is people get freaked out and then they're like, maybe I'll become an apocalyptic thinker or something, right? Because I don't think I can do anything if the science is this daunting. So there's something about how we present data and information that makes sure people can attach to it. And you've all seen Don't Look Up, right? Right? Perfect example of that, okay. The 5th problematic is the individual responsibility versus structural change argument that happens, right? And we know that was actually highly strategic, right? So all of you, I think we had this conversation at one point in time, that the carbon footprint game wasn't some fun little thing for people to learn about how to be a better citizen. It was actually created by British Petroleum to remind people that it's on you. Don't look at what we're doing, right? Like, we're not going to keep drilling, blah, blah, blah. And we are going to, right? We're going to make all this money. So, and what happens is they deliberately, and we bought into it. We've set up the my individual acts matter, or they don't matter. And then people say, well, if I'm doing this, then how do I fight against these people, right? And so and of course the short answer is both matter, right? We have to fight the structures, and we have to make better choices, even if only so that we model it to other people around us, right? But that's the other problematic we're dealing with. We get in the weeds on that one. And then the 6th is what I'm here to talk about a little bit, is this idea that technology will fix everything. And I've been in conversations where people have just said, everybody should just buy an electric car and then it'll be fine, right? And I was like, okay, so how do people afford that, A, right? We know that that's a prohibitive endeavor. We also have to remember that there are environmental damages when we rely on alternative forms of energy, right? Like solar panels aren't just made out of thin air, lithium batteries, right? Copper, all those things have to be mined. So that's done to the earth, but it's also done to the peoples who are living in those areas. And it becomes another form of neocolonialism, right? Where we just exploit people because the West needs their electric cars, right? And I remember saying the line at the talk that imagine if we just said to everybody, sure, go drive an electric car, but we never had a conversation about how we should live with less. Then people will just be like, well, the sun, I could just drive everywhere now, not recognizing that it's all interconnected in some way. It just becomes a get out of jail free card sort of thing, right? So the question I think about more than I should is how can a transformation from extraction to regeneration, from exploitation to reciprocity, from separation to interconnection be facilitated? You want me to say it again? Yes. Donna? I thought I heard that. That was good. How can a transformation from extraction to regeneration, exploitation to reciprocity, from separation to interconnection be facilitated? Because I feel like that's the grounding question, and I think it needs to undergird all the solution thinking we're doing about the climate crisis. Especially when people say, and I'm not kidding, and some of you know this stuff, like there's talk of building these giant things that block the sun, right? There's talk of like yeah. I know, I'm sitting in a room with these folks, I'm like, I'm sure you've invented that, but I think we should have a conversation about that before we put that up, right? You know. So, of course, we want to do all these things that cut down on greenhouse gas or do carbon capture, but we have to not fall into the trap of, and I'm going to put it in quotes because it's just an oxymoron, green capitalism. Because it's actually, right, it doesn't make sense, right? So we are good. I'm sure we all have LEDs. We compost. We do all these things. That's really good. It's when you start putting price tags on it and say, let's just live this way, but we don't change the underlying values. That's the problematic there. So while folks are creating these wild technologies, we have to also be working on this sort of inner technology, of our spiritual understanding of how this works. And years ago, the French priest, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, has anyone read him? He's wonderful, you might know him, right? I love him. In 1967, he said, he made the effort to lay before both the world of science and the world of religion the controversial proposition that there is and can be no opposition between the two. Each needs the other. So we've got to build that bridge. So here's some thoughts on what I was thinking about how to build that bridge. We need to build a greater connection to what we call nature. And even that word is limiting, right? Because, I mean, where I'm from, New York City, it's all man-made nature, right? All the original nature is gone, except for Inwood Hill Park and one little spot in the Bronx. But the rest of it is like man-made, quote, nature. But look where we live, right? How do we promote those, what E.O. Wilson calls biophilia, the love of life? And he doesn't mean like life, he means the love of all living things. Another one I've been thinking about is our practical changes, which I think we all probably do already, but how can we kick those up a notch? Like, what can we do on a level to say no to the rampant consumerism and what's the word I'm looking for? Preying upon us capitalism, right? Like, that's it, right? Like, how do we reject some of that? And then deeply, deeply, deeply think about our spiritual practices in terms of this. So with the peace education frame, because I did that too at the thing, the whole paper was grounded in peace education, is to look at root causes, right? So we could do the biophilia stuff. We could go out there, we can work with children, we can raise our children differently, we can think about that. But we also have to look at root causes. What are the roots of this? How are they interconnected? How can they be addressed? And this is why I think technology isn't the answer. Because technology cannot address root causes. Technology gives us wonderful fixes, right? But let's also take a moment and remember the downside of technology, right? There's tons of data now, right, that talks about how these little things that we all carry in our pockets are doing untold damage to children and young people and communities, right? People don't talk to each other. My colleague the other day she was like, she's my age, what did we do when we were kids? We didn't have these. And I played the piano, I read books, I went outside, and I was like, oh, she's like, I need to do that again, right? So like realizing that. So technology isn't a panacea especially because I think it can't get to these root causes. And these root causes are, like we mentioned, colonialism, capitalism, white supremacy, greed, right? Technology actually sort of stokes those fires, doesn't heal them. So I think whenever we're thinking about solutions or how to go in the world, what if we had a lens that said, let me look at this through both the economics, the socioeconomics, actually three things, socioeconomics and cultural and spiritual lens, right? But we don't do the spiritual, like lots of people do the economic piece, and they might do the sociocultural, right? But then we know that doesn't matter because people build plastics factories in the middle of poor neighborhoods, right? They put incinerators where they know people aren't going to fight them. That's a spiritual question as well, right? Why is that okay or not okay? So how do we tap into that? One thing I wrote about and thinking about too is radical inclusivity, right? So there's a lot of problems with the environmental movement, which some of us have talked about in other circles, right? There's a lot of like white people wanting to have conversations about this stuff, and they're focused on one thing, and then we silence the voices of the people who have the original knowledge, right? We're making progress, but we're not where we should be yet. So I think something about radical inclusivity, including the developed world and what we call the developing world, although one would argue if the United States is in fact developed given our death rates and our mortality rates and other things, right? So that's for another sermon. And the indigenous voices, right? Which we know have a wholly different sense of relationship with Earth and other living things, right? And I also threw in the idea of, which I think ties into this, is the notion of what is replicable versus what is scalable, right? So I had this conversation with a colleague, both teaching in the environmental studies department and said, like his students would come up with these wonderful ideas and he'd say to them, yeah, but that's not scalable. And I said, I didn't want to be, I was like, well, can I ask a question? I was like, if they're coming up with community-based solutions, isn't that enough? Isn't that the answer? Don't we then create a series of community-based ideas, right? Like, so scalable is capitalist language. Replicable is something that other people can take as a model and do. And we live in a part of the world where there's some really good stuff happening, and I think if we live into that, we can model things that can be replicated, right? And so I feel like that's all, though, guided by spiritual underpinnings, right? All of humanity, no matter how we define faith, and I know we don't always like the word faith, we don't always like the word spiritual, but we come here together to get some kind of nourishment, so maybe that's your spirituality, if the word upsets you, right? But what is it that's going to sustain you? Where do we find that spiritual practice? Where in our day-to-day or in our communal work do we find the things that serve as our grounding, our true north, whatever you want to call it, right? And how do we make it part of a daily, at least daily, maybe not daily, weekly? Does that sound good? Weekly? Maybe daily, ideally. Because I think we need that to think differently about how we come up with solutions. I also think we need that, without a doubt, to sustain it. Because many of us in this room have been activists our entire adult lives. I started in high school, and it's exhausting work, and I think the only reason I've been able to survive is when I remember that I need something to ground me, something spiritual that keeps bringing me back to the why and the how. So I have 6 questions that I decided to close this sermon, because this is what I close the talk with, right? Because I think every time we're about to make a decision or think about something, I wanted to encapsulate 6 ways we can ask ourselves, 6 things we can ask ourselves. Am I using an intersectional lens to examine assumptions to ensure that all points of view are included? So I'll break that down, right? If I'm looking at a problem, like putting solar panels or getting an electric car, am I looking at every person, place, thing, however you want to language it, that has a stake in this, right? Am I truly looking intersectionally? Or am I just looking because this is an answer, right? 2, who is helped by this? Who is harmed? So we often think of the helped, but we sort of are like, well, the harm will be less. But we have to hold them, I think, in the same regard. Who is helped, who is harmed? 3, have I centered the voices of those who are most impacted? And yeah, right? And I don't think we do that. And technology, right? Yeah, tends not to do that. The 4th one I have I looked to ancestors or First Nations, Indigenous, Native people for wisdom and models? And this is not an invitation to co-opt practices, because you can look for ancestors in your own tradition. I was part of a practice recently where I just looked at how my Calabrian great-great-grandparents and great-great-great-great-great, how they lived, right? They lived far more in tune with land. They lived far more in tune in community, right? I don't have to take someone else's ancestors. I can look within my own ancestors, right, to do that. But also, we can also be looking at how these different cultural communities have managed to live in a way that we can learn from. And this one is directly stolen from my Native colleagues in Seattle, where I used to live and work. Am I considering 7 generations into the future? Future thinking, like when I come up with something, what's the future I see and can I live into it? I was amazed in that conference of like all these super smarty pants folks, how the conversation was very immediate. Well, we need to do this now because we only have 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And no one was having the conversation. But what does that mean 7 generations down the road, right? And so we have to, if a technology fix is only a fix for 20 years, is it a value? Does it have value? Is it going to do more harm? So the 7 generations. And then, what is my spiritual practice teaching me or calling me to do? And maybe that'll just help guide you in that sense of where I need a choice or a decision needs to be made. Really ground into your own spiritual practice or what you need to do. The work that those of us committed to planetary change are called to do right now is urgent, and it is daunting and will not be remedied by quick fixes. And I think if we see ourselves as members of a collective called to care for creation in a way that ensures a healthy flourishing of all life for generations to come, we must act, but we must act mindfully, grounded in spirituality. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so thought-provoking. I have a headache. Okay, please join me in singing song 1064, Blue Boat Home, a song I love. And if you are able, willing and able to stand.
Thank you, Catherine, one of my all-time faves. Our closing words also come from Earth Prayer. It is a Pawnee Osage Omaha Indian song. Remember, remember the circle of the sky, the stars and the brown eagle, the supernatural winds breathing night and day from the four directions. Remember, remember the great life of the sun breathing on the earth. It lies upon the earth to bring out life upon the earth, life covering the earth. Remember, remember the sacredness of things, running streams and dwellings, the young within the nest, a heart for sacred fire, the holy flame of fire.
Please join me in the words in your order of service, extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this chalice and not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Go in peace, and also those who would like to hear Anthony speak, come join right in this area, please.